The bucket slipped from Grace Okafor's hands, soapy water flooding across the marble floor of Adeyemi Holdings' executive corridor. Her heart hammered as she dropped to her knees, frantically mopping with her already soaked cloth. Any second now, one of the senior staff would walk by and add this to the growing list of reasons why she didn't belong here. "Child, let me help you." Grace looked up to find the new cleaning woman, Mama Nkechi, already kneeling beside her with a mop. The older woman's knees cracked audibly as she bent down, but her weathered face held only kindness. "No, Mama, please. You'll hurt yourself. I can manage. 2 hands work faster than 1. Mama Nkechi smiled and began squeezing out the excess water. "Besides, we're both just trying to make it through the day with our dignity intact, aren't we?" Grace felt tears prick her eyes. In the 3 months since she'd started as a junior accountant at this prestigious company, no one had shown her this kind of simple humanity. The other women treated her like she was invisible at best, or like dirt under their expensive shoes at worst. "Thank you, Mama," Grace whispered. "What's your name, child?" "Grace. Grace Okafor." "Grace," Mama Nkechi repeated thoughtfully. "A good name. Names matter. They shape our destiny." She wrung out her cloth and looked directly into Grace's eyes. "Tell me, Grace, why do you think some people in this building treat others like they're less than human?" Grace hesitated, glancing down the corridor. I think some people measure worth by money and position. They forget we're all just people." Mama Nkechi's eyes sparkled with something Grace couldn't quite name. Wise words from someone so young. Remember that wisdom, especially in places like this. What Grace didn't know was that Mama Nkechi wasn't a cleaner at all. She was Mrs. Folasade Adeyemi, widow of the late Chief Adeyemi, who had built this empire, and mother to Chinedu Adeyemi, the new CEO. 6 months ago, she'd buried her husband. At the funeral, she'd watched woman after woman circle her grieving son like vultures spotting fresh prey. Beautiful women, educated women, wealthy women, all seeing only the billions he would inherit, not the man he was. Her husband had always said, "Folasade, the true measure of a person is how they treat those who can do nothing for them." She decided to put that wisdom to the test. If her son was going to bring a woman into their family, into her late husband's legacy, that woman needed to have a good heart, not just good manners for those who mattered. So Mrs. Folasade had done the unthinkable. She'd enlisted Mr. Bakare, the head of security, and her late husband's most trusted friend, to help her create a new identity. She'd transformed herself into Mama Nkechi, a simple cleaning woman, and taken a position in her own son's company. For 2 weeks, she'd scrubbed floors, emptied bins, and watched. She'd seen everything. Blessing Nwosu, the senior administrative officer, had barked orders at her like she was training a dog. Rita Okoro from marketing had literally stepped over her while she was cleaning, phone pressed to her ear, not even acknowledging her existence. Other staff members had mocked her slow pace, complained about her to supervisors, even made cruel jokes about her appearance. But Grace Okafor was different. Grace held doors open. Grace said good morning, and actually waited for a response. Grace had shared her lunch when she thought no one was looking. And now, Grace had knelt in dirty water to help a cleaner she barely knew. Mrs. Folasade knew she'd found what she was looking for. "Grace!" A sharp voice cut through the corridor. Blessing Nwosu stood there in her designer suit, arms crossed, eyes narrowed. "The CEO wants those audit files in 15 minutes. Why are you on the floor playing with mops?" Grace scrambled to her feet. "I spilled water. I don't care about your excuses. Get to work." Blessing's eyes flicked dismissively over Mama Nkechi. "And you, old woman, this floor is still dirty. Do your job properly." Mrs. Folasade kept her head bowed, but inside she was taking notes. Blessing Nwosu had just shown exactly who she was. Grace rushed off, and Mrs. Folasade continued mopping slowly, invisibly, watching everything. That evening, she sat in her real office, the one on the top floor, that no one except Mr. Bakar knew she still used. She'd removed her disguise and sat in her elegant wrapper and blouse, gold jewelry glinting in the lamplight. "You were right about the Okafor girl," Mr. Bakare said, setting down a file. "I did a background check like you asked. Her father died 4 years ago. She's supporting her mother and 3 younger siblings on her salary. She's also studying for her professional accounting exams at night. And yet she finds time to be kind." Mrs. Folasade smiled. "Bakare, I think my son needs to notice this girl." "With respect, madam, young Mr. Chinedu has many women trying to get his attention." "Exactly. Which is why he needs to see Grace in a context where her competence shines. What project is he working on now?" "He's reviewing all company accounts before the expansion into West Africa. He wants to ensure there's no fraud or mismanagement." Mrs. Folasade's smile widened. "Then he needs a junior accountant with integrity to assist him. Someone thorough. Someone honest." 3 days later, Grace found herself summoned to the CEO's office. Her hands trembled as she knocked on the massive mahogany door. "Come in." Chinedu Adeyemi sat behind his father's old desk, but somehow he'd made the space his own. He was younger than she'd expected, maybe 32, with kind eyes that reminded her of someone, though she couldn't place who. "Miss Okafor, please sit. I've been reviewing your work on the monthly reconciliations. You caught 3 errors that our senior accountants missed." Grace's mouth went dry. I just tried to be thorough, sir." "Thorough is exactly what I need. I'm conducting a comprehensive audit before our expansion. I need someone detail-oriented, someone who won't overlook inconsistencies just because a senior person signed off on them. Would you be willing to work directly with me on this project?" "Yes, sir. Absolutely." "Good. We'll start tomorrow. Be prepared for late nights. This is important work." As Grace left his office, she felt like she was floating. This was her chance to prove herself, to show that she belonged here despite her humble background. She didn't see Blessing Nwosu watching from down the hallway, eyes burning with jealousy. That night, in an expensive restaurant in Victoria Island, Blessing and Rita sat across from each other, wine glasses glinting in the candlelight. "Did you see the way he looked at her?" Blessing hissed. "That village girl with her cheap clothes and her busybody attitude. Since when does Chinedu Adeyemi personally recruit junior staff?" Rita swirled her wine thoughtfully. "She's pretty in that natural, innocent way. Men like Chinedu eat that up. They think it means authenticity. We've been positioning ourselves for months. I've attended every corporate event, worn the right clothes, said the right things. And now this nobody comes along? So what do you want to do about it?" Blessing leaned forward, voice dropping. "We make her leave, voluntarily or otherwise." Over the next 2 weeks, Grace and Chinedu worked together almost every evening. Mrs. Folasade, in her Mama and Nkechi disguise, made sure she was always cleaning nearby, listening, observing. She watched her son's face light up when Grace explained a complex financial discrepancy she'd uncovered. She saw the way he walked Grace to the bus stop when they worked late, concerned for her safety. She noticed how Grace never tried to flirt or manipulate, just did excellent work and treated him with professional respect. She also noticed Blessing and Rita circling like sharks. It started small. Grace's files would go missing. Her computer would mysteriously log out, losing hours of work. Coffee was accidentally spilled on her reports. In the cafeteria, the whispers grew louder. "I heard she's sleeping with him to get ahead. Probably using juju. These village girls always do. She dresses like a church rat, but Somehow she's got the CEO's attention? Grace held her head high and kept working, but Mrs. Folasade could see the toll it was taking. One evening, she found Grace crying quietly in the stairwell. "Child, what's wrong?" Grace wiped her eyes quickly. "Nothing, Mama Nkechi. Just tired. These people are being cruel to you. I can handle it. My father always said that good work speaks louder than bad words. Your father was a wise man." Mrs. Folasade sat beside her on the steps. But sometimes wisdom also means knowing when you're being attacked and protecting yourself. I don't know how to fight people like Blessing and Rita. They have money, connections, confidence. I just have my work. Your work and your character. Never underestimate what that's worth. Mrs. Folasade patted her hand. And you're not as alone as you think. Have you ever faced cruelty in your workplace, or been bullied by people who felt superior to you? Drop a comment below and share your experience. And if you're enjoying this story of resilience and hidden truth, hit that like button to let us know. Let's continue. The next day, everything escalated. Grace was leaving work when she found Blessing waiting by her car. Well, not her car. She took the bus. Blessing leaned against a gleaming Mercedes, arms folded. "Grace, we need to talk. I'm tired, Blessing. Can this wait?" "No, it can't." Blessing pulled an envelope from her designer handbag and held it out. "There's 500,000 naira in here." Grace stared at the envelope like it was a snake. "What?" "It's simple. You resign. You tell Chinedu you've got a family emergency. You need to leave Lagos, whatever story you want. You take this money, and you disappear from his life. You're trying to bribe me? I'm trying to help you understand reality. You don't belong in Chinedu's world, Grace. He's a billionaire. His wife will need to attend state dinners, host international investors, represent one of the most powerful families in Nigeria. Can you do that? In your bus stop shoes and your market clothes?" Grace's hands clenched into fists. "My shoes and clothes have nothing to do with my worth. Maybe not to you, but to everyone else? You're an embarrassment waiting to happen. Take the money. Go back to wherever you came from. Find a nice teacher or civil servant to marry. Someone appropriate. I'm not interested in marrying Chinedu. I'm interested in doing my job well." Liar. Every woman in this company wants him. You're just better at pretending you don't. Grace picked up the envelope, and for a moment, Blessing smiled triumphantly. Then Grace tore it in half and let the pieces fall. "My dignity isn't for sale. Neither is my career. I got this position through hard work, and that's how I'll keep it." Blessing's face transformed into something ugly. "You'll regret this. Women like you always do." Grace turned and walked toward the bus stop, heart pounding. She didn't see Mrs. Folasade watching from behind a parked car, pride and worry warring in her chest. That night, Blessing and Rita met again. She refused the money. Blessing was pacing, fury making her movements sharp. "Can you believe the arrogance?" Then we moved to Plan B. Rita pulled out her phone. "My cousin works in the IT department. He owes me a favor." "What kind of favor?" "The kind where Grace Okafor becomes a thief." They spent the next hour planning every detail. Rita's cousin would access the company's financial system and create false transactions, showing that Grace had been embezzling money. They'd use her audit access against her, make it look like she'd been stealing funds and hiding the evidence in her reports. The amount would be significant enough to guarantee criminal charges, 5 million naira. "What about the CCTV footage?" Blessing asked. "They'll check to see who was at her computer." "Already thought of that. My cousin will delete the footage from the server room for the relevant dates. It'll look like a system glitch. And what if Chinedu doesn't believe it? He seems to trust her." Rita smiled coldly. He'll have no choice. The evidence will be irrefutable. By tomorrow evening, Grace Okafor will be in handcuffs. The next morning started normally. Grace arrived early, brought files to Chinedu's office, went over some discrepancies they'd found. He smiled at her work, complimented her attention to detail. For a moment, she let herself feel proud. Then at 11 o'clock, she was summoned to the executive conference room. She walked in to find Chinedu at the head of the table, his face grave. Mr. Bakare stood in the corner. Blessing and Rita sat to one side, and 3 board members she'd never met occupied the other chairs. A lawyer she didn't recognize had documents spread before him. "Miss Okafor, please sit down." Chinedu's voice was formal, distant. "What's going on?" "We've discovered a serious financial discrepancy." The lawyer spoke. 5 million naira has been transferred out of company accounts over the past 6 weeks. The transactions were all authorized using your employee login credentials. Grace's blood turned to ice. "That's impossible. I would never." "The evidence is quite clear." The lawyer pushed printed reports across the table. "These are the transaction logs. Your username, your authorization codes, transferred to an offshore account." "I didn't do this," Grace's voice rose. "Someone is framing me." Blessing spoke up, voice dripping with false concern. "Grace, I know this must be difficult, but the evidence is right here. Perhaps you were in financial trouble. Supporting your family is expensive. No one would judge you for—" "I'm not a thief!" Grace stood, chair scraping back. "Chinedu, you know me. You've worked with me for weeks. Do you really think I would steal from this company?" Chinedu's jaw was tight. "I don't want to believe it. But the evidence can be fabricated. Check the CCTV footage. See who actually accessed my computer during those times." Mr. Bakare cleared his throat. "We attempted that. The footage for the relevant dates appears to have been deleted. A system malfunction, according to IT." Grace felt the room spinning. They'd thought of everything. "I move that we contact the authorities immediately," one of the board members said. "This is a criminal matter." "No, please," Grace's voice broke. "I didn't do this. I swear on my father's grave I didn't do this." But 20 minutes later, Detective Amadi arrived with 2 uniformed officers. Grace was read her rights while employees gathered in the lobby, phones out, recording everything. Rita made sure to stand close enough to be heard. Can you believe it? She seemed so innocent. Just goes to show you can't trust anyone these days. Probably thought she could seduce the CEO and steal company money at the same time. Grace's hands were cuffed behind her back. She'd never felt such humiliation in her life. Tears streamed down her face as officers led her through the lobby, past dozens of employees who watched with expressions ranging from shock to satisfaction. Then, in the crowd, she saw Mama and Kechi. The old cleaning woman pushed forward, grabbed Grace's hand. "I know your heart, child. Truth always rises. Remember that. Truth always rises." Grace wanted to say something, but officers were pulling her toward the door. She looked back once and saw Chinedu standing in his office doorway, face unreadable, watching her being taken away. Mrs. Folasade waited until the police car disappeared, then slipped away to make a phone call. 30 minutes later, she sat in her real office with Mr. Bakare. "You were right, madam. That Blessing woman is behind this. And Rita Okoro's cousin in IT. Can you prove it? I've had my people monitoring them since you expressed concern. We have photographs of Blessing and Rita meeting, restaurant receipts, communications between Rita and her cousin. And I found something else." He opened a laptop. "Rita's cousin isn't very smart. He deleted the CCTV footage, but he forgot about the server access logs. We can see exactly when he logged in and what files he deleted." Mrs. Folasade's eyes hardened. "Compile everything. I'll give it to Chinedu tonight." Are you going to tell him about your disguise? Not yet. First, we save Grace. Then I'll deal with my son's reaction to his mother pretending to be a cleaner. That evening, Chinedu sat in his office, unable to focus. Something about the whole situation felt wrong. Grace had seemed genuinely shocked, genuinely hurt. And in weeks of working together, she'd never shown the slightest sign of greed or dishonesty. In fact, she'd been almost painfully honest, pointing out every discrepancy no matter how small, even when it made more work for both of them. A knock at his door. Mr. Bakare entered, carrying a USB drive and an envelope. "Sir, your mother asked me to give you this." "My mother? I haven't seen her in days. She said she needed time to grieve. She's been around." Bakare's mouth twitched. "She asked me to tell you that sometimes you must trust your instincts over evidence. Check the server logs for deletions. The note explains everything." After Bakare left, Chinedu opened the envelope. Ms. James' mother's elegant handwriting filled the page. "My son, by the time you read this, you may be angry with me. But know that everything I've done out of love. The USB drive contains evidence that Grace Okafor is innocent. More importantly, it contains evidence of who is really guilty. Trust your heart. Your father always said the same thing I'm telling you now. Character reveals itself in how we treat those who can do nothing for us. Grace passed that test. Now you must pass yours. Stand up for what is right, even when the evidence seems to point elsewhere. Love, your mother, who is sometimes foolish, but always protective." P.S. We will talk about my methods later. For now, focus on justice. Chinedu plugged in the USB drive. For the next hour, he reviewed everything. Photographs of Blessing and Rita meeting, detailed records of Rita's cousin accessing the financial system, timestamps showing exactly when the false transactions were created, and most damning of all, the server logs showing deleted CCTV footage and who had deleted it. His hands trembled with rage. Grace had been telling the truth. She'd been framed, humiliated, arrested, all because of jealousy and greed. He grabbed his phone and called Detective Amadi. "This is Chinedu Adeyemi. I need you to halt all charges against Grace Okafor immediately. I have evidence that she was framed. I'm sending it to you now, and I want the real criminals arrested." The next morning, an emergency meeting was called. Grace was released from custody and brought back to the company. Still shaken, still confused. She walked into the conference room to find the same people from yesterday, but the atmosphere was completely different. Chinedu stood as she entered. "Grace, I owe you an apology. We all do." Before she could respond, Blessing and Rita were escorted in by security. Blessing's confident sneer faltered when she saw Detective Amadi waiting. Chinedu's voice was ice. "We've discovered the truth. Rita, your cousin in IT has already confessed to everything. He detailed exactly how you asked him to frame Grace, how you created false transactions, how you deleted CCTV footage." Rita's face went white. Blessing tried to rally. "This is ridiculous. You're going to believe some IT worker over us?" "I'm going to believe evidence." Chinedu pulled up the files on the conference room screen. Bank records showing payments. From you to your cousin, Rita. Server logs showing exactly when the footage was deleted. Screenshots of your messages planning this entire scheme. He turned to Blessing. And photographs of you offering Grace a bribe to leave the company. She doesn't deserve you. Blessing's composure shattered. She's nobody. A poor girl from nowhere, with no connections, no class, nothing. We were trying to protect you from making a mistake. The only mistake I made was trusting people like you. Chinedu's voice could have frozen water. Detective Amadi, they're all yours. As officers moved forward with handcuffs, Rita started crying. Blessing made me do it. She said it would be simple, that no one would get hurt. You destroyed an innocent woman's reputation and tried to send her to prison." Detective Amadi snapped the cuffs on Blessing's wrists. "You both hurt someone. Now you'll face the consequences." The room erupted in chaos as officers led them out. Grace stood frozen, unable to process what was happening. Chinedu approached her gently. "Grace, I am so sorry. I should have trusted my instincts. I should have trusted you." "How did you find out?" Her voice was barely a whisper. "Someone who cares about you made sure I saw the truth." He paused. "There's someone I want you to meet, someone who's been watching over you this whole time." He led her out of the conference room, through corridors she'd never walked before, to an elevator that required a special key. They rose to the top floor, past executive offices, to a door marked private. Chinedu knocked, then opened the door. Grace stepped into an elegant office, African art on the walls, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lagos. And sitting behind an enormous desk, dressed in a beautiful blue wrapper and gold jewelry, was Mama Nkechi. Except she wasn't Mama Nkechi at all. Grace's mind struggled to process what she was seeing. The cleaning woman, the kind old lady who'd helped her, who'd comforted her, who'd held her hand when she was arrested. She was sitting in this executive office like she owned it. Because she did own it. "Grace, I'd like you to meet my mother," Chinedu said quietly. "Mrs. Folasade Adeyemi." Grace's legs almost gave out. "Mama Nkechi?" Mrs. Folasade stood and came around the desk. "My real name is Folasade. I'm sorry for deceiving you, child. Please, sit down. Let me explain." Grace sank into a chair, mind reeling. You're his mother? But you were cleaning. You were—" The implications hit her. "You were testing me. Testing all of us." "Yes." Mrs. Folasade sat beside her, not behind the desk. Eye to eye, equal to equal. "After my husband died, I watched women circle my son like he was prey. Beautiful women, educated women, wealthy women. All of them saw only his money, his status, his position. None of them saw him as a person. So you disguised yourself as a cleaner to see how people would treat you when you had no power." Grace's voice was hollow. "I needed to know who my son was bringing into his life. My husband always said, that character reveals itself in how we treat those who can do nothing for us. I needed to see hearts, not performances." Grace stood abruptly. "You used me. You let me think you were my friend, that we were equals. And all along, you were judging me? I was protecting my son. Can you understand that?" "I understand that you lied to me." Tears spilled down Grace's cheeks. "I trusted you. I confided in you. And you were just— what? Taking notes? Deciding if I was good enough?" Mrs. Folasade's own eyes glistened. "You were the only one who was kind to me when you thought I was nothing. The only one who helped me, who spoke to me like I mattered. Yes, I was testing you, and you passed every test with flying colors. Your kindness wasn't a performance, Grace. It was real. But your friendship was fake." "No." Mrs. Folasade reached for her hand, but Grace pulled away. "My methods were deceptive. My affection was real. You reminded me of myself when I was young. Before I married into wealth, I was just a girl from Ibadan trying to make her way in Lagos. I know what it's like to be dismissed because of where you come from. I know what it's like to be invisible." "Then why did you do this to me?" "Because I've also seen what greed and manipulation can do to a family. I've watched women destroy men for their money. I couldn't let that happen to my son." Mrs. Folasade's voice broke. "My husband built this company with integrity. I won't let it fall into the wrong hands because Chinedu chose poorly." Grace looked at Chinedu, who'd been silent during this exchange. "And you? Did you know about this?" "Not until last night. I was as shocked as you are now." "So what happens now? You've decided I'm worthy?" I pass inspection? I get your approval? The bitterness in Grace's voice was sharp. You get my apology, Mrs. Follisode said. You get my respect, and you get my promise that I will never deceive you again. Grace stood there, torn between anger and understanding, between hurt and empathy. Finally, she spoke. I need time to process this, all of it. The frame-up, the revelation, everything. I need time. Of course, Chinedu said immediately. Take all the time you need. Your position is secure. Your reputation will be fully restored. And we'll issue a company-wide statement about what really happened. Grace nodded and walked to the door. Then she paused and looked back at Mrs. Follisode. Mama, Mrs. Follisode, when you held my hand yesterday, when they were taking me away, that felt real. It was real, child. It was the most real thing I've done in months. Then maybe, eventually, we can find our way back to real. Grace managed a small, sad smile. But not today. 3 months later, Grace stood in front of the bathroom mirror in her new apartment, a modest but comfortable place she'd found in Yaba, closer to work. She could finally afford it after her promotion to senior auditor and the settlement the company had provided for what she'd been through. Her phone buzzed. A text from Chinedu. Dinner tonight. Just as friends. No pressure. They'd been rebuilding slowly. Professional respect had grown back into friendship. She'd learned that he hadn't known about his mother's disguise, that he'd been just as hurt by the deception. They'd talked for hours about family expectations, about pressure, about trying to be good people in a world that often rewarded the opposite. Another text, this one from Mrs. Follisode. I'm making a goosey soup today. I'd love to have you for dinner. I promise to wear my real clothes and jewelry this time. Grace smiled despite herself. She and Mrs. Follisode had been taking things slowly too, meeting for tea, talking honestly about trust and forgiveness. It turned out that when Mrs. Follisode wasn't pretending to be humble, she actually was humble, in the ways that mattered. She listened. She admitted when she was wrong. She understood that love without trust was just control. Grace texted back to both of them. Dinner sounds lovely, but I'm cooking. My place. 7 p.m. That evening, Grace set the table in her small dining area. It wasn't fancy, but it was hers. She'd made jollof rice, fried plantains, and chicken. Simple food, honestly made. When the doorbell rang, she opened it to find Chinedu holding flowers and Mrs. Follisode carrying a bottle of wine. I wasn't sure if I should bring anything, Mrs. Follisode said. I've never been very good at being a guest. I'm usually the one hosting. Then this will be good practice. Grace smiled and stepped aside to let them in. They sat around her small table, so different from the grand conference rooms and executive offices where they usually met. Grace served the food, and for a moment, there was awkward silence. Then Mrs. Follisode spoke. Grace, I want to tell you something. My husband, Chief Adeyemi, he used to say that the measure of a person is how they treat those who can do nothing for them. I tested you with that principle, but you taught me something I didn't expect. What's that? That the measure of a person is also how they respond when they've been wronged. You could have sued us. You could have gone to the press. You could have used your vindication as a weapon. Mrs. Follisode's eyes were bright with tears. Instead, you asked for time to heal. You chose understanding over revenge. That's a strength I don't have. I was angry, Grace admitted. I'm still angry sometimes. But I also understand why you did it. In your position, with your resources, with people constantly trying to use your son for his money, I might have done something similar. You forgive me then? I'm working on it. Forgiveness is a process, not a moment. Grace looked between them. But I want you both to understand something. I'm not here because I passed some test. I'm not here because I proved myself worthy. I'm here because I choose to be, and I can choose to leave whenever I want." "We understand," Chinedu said quietly. "Good, because if we're going to build something, friendship, relationship, whatever this becomes, it needs to be based on choice and respect, not tests, not games, not manipulation." Mrs. Folasade reached across the table and took Grace's hand. This time, Grace didn't pull away. "You've taught me more in these 3 months than I've learned in years. My son is lucky to have you in his life. We both are." They ate dinner, and slowly, the conversation became easier. Mrs. Folasade told stories about Chief Adeyemi, about building the business from nothing, about the real struggles behind the wealth. Chinedu talked about the pressure of inheritance, about trying to honor his father while being his own man. Grace shared stories about her siblings, about her mother's strength, about learning to navigate a world that constantly underestimated her. By the end of the evening, something had shifted. Not fixed, not healed, but shifted toward healing. As they prepared to leave, Mrs. Folasade hugged Grace tightly. "Thank you for giving us a chance. Thank you for choosing to stay." "Thank you for finally being honest," Grace whispered back. After they left, Grace cleaned up the dishes and sat by her window, looking out at Lagos's glittering lights. She thought about the journey from that first day, when a bucket of water spilled, to this moment, where she was building something real with people who'd once deceived her. Her phone buzzed one more time, a message from Chinedu. "Thank you for tonight, for your grace. Your actual grace, not just your name. You make me want to be better." She smiled and typed back, "We make each other better. That's how it should be." Grace set down her phone and closed her eyes. She thought about her father, about what he'd taught her about dignity and work and treating people with respect. She thought about how his lessons had carried her through the darkest moments. And she realized that the tests weren't over. Life would keep testing her, keep challenging her character and her choices. But she also realized that she'd been passing the most important test all along, the test of staying true to herself, even when it would have been easier to become bitter, to become hard, to become like the people who'd tried to destroy her. That night, as Grace drifted off to sleep, she smiled. Tomorrow, she'd go back to work, to the audit projects she loved, to the challenges of rebuilding trust and relationships. But tonight, she rested in the knowledge that she'd stayed true to who she was. And that, in the end, was the greatest victory of all. If you've enjoyed this story about integrity, forgiveness, and the power of staying true to yourself, even in the darkest moments, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to our channel for more inspiring African folktales, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever been tested in ways you didn't expect? How did you handle it? We'd love to hear your stories. Until next time, remember, your character is defined not by how others treat you, but by how you respond when facing injustice. Stay strong, stay true, and stay blessed.